Ancient tides within me stir, a voice from lands no maps confer. The veil grows thin, the truth runs deep. In autumn's hush, the soul must weep. But from silence gifts arise, old stars reborn behind my eyes. Good morning. Welcome to Enlightened Heart Soul Connection. This morning's energy is running deep with ancient memory, the memory that your DNA carries, the memory that's coded into the mitochondria of every cell within your body. And today's also a 7-day. It's May 11th, 2025. And if we reduce that down, 5 plus 11 is 16. 16 reduces to 7. Plus 2025, which reduces to 9. 9 plus 7 is 16. 1 plus 6 is 7. So that was interesting to me. I felt the energy while I was meditating on these cards this morning. I felt the energy of 6, which is harmony and reciprocity, balancing out. I felt that energy, but it's a 7-day. So today's about the inner journey, spiritual alignment, and seeking divine truth. So what I've done here is I've pulled 2 cards from the Starseed Oracle by Rebecca Campbell. And at the bottom of the deck is the card Lost Lands. It says, soul memories and gifts. You've done this before. This is soul remembrance of places like Lemuria, Avalon, Atlantis. You've done this before. Your gifts are ancient. These energies live within you, waiting to be unlocked. And I was looking at the card Seas of Mintaka, which was the card at the top of the deck. And it started this whole thought process of our DNA. So Seas of Mintaka, this is the card on top. This says, seeing potential, bringing unconsciousness to light. Unconsciousness. Don't let it rule you as fate. Don't let it become your fate. Water. The Seas of Mintaka, right? The emotional body, clarity, reflection. It's time to see clearly and lovingly what's been hidden. And as I was meditating on this, the song Cold by Crossfade started to come to the forefront of my thinking. And I was hearing, I never meant to be so cold. Like the drug that gets me high, like the antidote that gets me by. The song's about regret and emotional distance, about having a desire to soften. When it comes to this reading, this is a reflection of the collective thawing old defenses. Things that have been put into stasis are now waking back up again. And it beautifully reflects the Seas of Mintaka as old feelings are resurfacing. You're remembering your soul's ancient purpose. To rise, you must release. To see, you must wait. Transformation is not a rush, it's a rhythm. It's an ebb and flow. So I don't just see this card, the Seas of Mintaka. I don't just see it or read it. I remember it. I feel it. I'm looking at this card and it's crystalline waters, just on the edge of the universe. And I've been to this place. I've lived lives there. When I astral travel and I end up in Mintaka, I have had memories where I've been on the beaches during the chaos and destruction of the planet, and the waves are as tall as mountains. And I've had journeys where I've gone there and I've entered portals. Like I've walked into the sea itself and I've entered portals that have taken me to other places. I feel this card. I've walked the beaches, I've felt the air, I've smelled the sea. So even when chaos tore through the skies and waves rose taller than the mountains, maybe you have too. Maybe it's not just a metaphor. Maybe it is a memory. Maybe it's not a metaphor for the unconscious needing to be brought into awareness. Maybe it is a memory, and that memory lives in our DNA. In the waters of our cells, in the knowing that we're not just of Earth, that we are stars. These cards aren't just messages, they're keys, and I'm now hearing the song All We Are by One Republic. We're all stars, that's all we are. So, as I'm hearing that song by One Republic, I'm brought to a couple different Bible passages, Old Testament scripture, if you will. So the first passage comes from Isaiah chapter 14, verses 12 through 14. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. And this is the fall of Lucifer. And, then that brought me to another passage, which comes from the book of Ezekiel. So it was Ezekiel 28, verses 12 through 19. Son of man, take up lamentation upon the king of Tyrus, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord God. You sealed up the sum, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You've been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. The sardius, topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, and the carbuncle, and the gold. The workmanship of thy tablets and of thy pipes was prepared in the day that thou was created. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. You walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created, till iniquity was found in thee. But the multitude of thy merchandise, they have filled the midst of thee with violence, and thou hast sinned. Therefore I will cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of the fire. Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before kings, that they may behold thee. Thou hast defiled thy sanctuaries by the multitude of thine iniquities, by the iniquity of thy traffic. Therefore I will bring forth a fire from the midst of thee. It shall devour thee, and I will bring thee to ashes upon the earth in the sight of all of them that behold thee. All they that know thee among the people shall be astonished at thee. Thou shalt be a terror, and never shall you be any more. This is the fall of the king of Tyrus. But it got me thinking, like, we're all stars. That's Song One Republic. I was reading these scriptures, getting ready for this reading, and I was remembering that the Hebrew word for star, or that celestial body, also means prince. The celestial bodies. The fall of Lucifer and the fall of the king of Tyrus, it's a metaphor. It's the archetype of the ego. And the self-aware human that allows ego to control their life through fear and illusion. All right, so the next passage, the dignity of humanity. This comes from Psalm 8, verses 4 through 6. What is man that thou art mindful of him, and the son of man that thou visited him? For thou had made man a little lower than the angels, and crowned him with glory and honor. You made him to have dominion over the works of thy hands. Thou put all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen, yea, and the beasts of the field, the fowl of the air, and the fish of the sea, and whatsoever passeth through the paths of the seas. O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is thy name in all the earth. It's the ego having an existential crisis. I mean, these stories were not put into this book, this library, if you will, of teachings. And I'm not boo-booing Christianity by any sort of means at all. I just don't think that it's been interpreted properly and people aren't being taught correctly. It's being used as a control system. I'm going to go off on a little tangent here, but it's, been used for centuries as a control system. And I just want to show you, collective, that these stories, they're, no different than the stories of the Greek gods and goddesses. They're all archetypes. I mean, what we thought was, there are definitely temples to these archetypes, but even in ancient times, they were revered as aspects of their personality. Oh, this is the fall of the ego. How did humanity get to where it is? The fall of the ego. All right. So, bringing us back around to the seas of Mintaka. There's potential to bring these unconscious, egoic patterns into light, not to judge them, but to remember your origin with the lost lands. To reconnect your Edenic, to reconnect with your vision. That's the star message too. We're all stars. That's all we are. Return to your inner knowing, where the divine spark was never lost, just forgotten. In Ezekiel, when God's talking to the king of Tyrus, You know, he's talking about all the crystals and the precious gems and stones in Eden. We look at Eden as a place. It's a place within us. Eden is the garden, the pineal gland, our third eye. The place where imagination and creativity run free. Remember where you come from. That does the divine spark. It was never lost. It was just forgotten. So the Starseed Oracle lays the groundwork. It's reminding us of the ancient memory carried in our soul of lost lands and wisdom seeded into our DNA, right? This memory is the spark that begins to crack through the ego shell. Lost lands, it calls us to remember what we already know. The Seas of Mintaka asks us to bring what's unconscious to the light. That awareness is what opens the gate to the next layer of guidance, which came from the Angels and Ancestors Oracle deck by Kyle Gray. I don't use this deck very much, but today it was calling to be let out. Our ancestors, the magic that takes place within our DNA. It's the not just the genes that we carry from past family members. And we carry their memory too. We carry their wisdom within our DNA. I mean, we're definitely scientifically looking at mitochondria as a potential form of memory storage for computers, like a biological thumb drive. And for whatever reason, when I grabbed the Starseed Oracle, I chose to pull the Angels and Ancestors Oracle as well. So let's start here with the card at the bottom of the deck. We have the Oracle, and it says, wait for important information. Pause before taking action. Spirit is guiding you, but the ego wants must be quieted down. Look for signs, conversations, dreams. Pay attention to everything. There's important information coming. At the top of the deck is the card Autumn, and I'm looking at a crow or a raven. And it makes me think of the Lightseers Tarot, where the swords cards are crows and ravens, and birds are messengers. And it made me think about thoughts, outdated ideas. This Autumn card says, release the old and rest. You know, just like the trees go into a dormant period. I believe we talked about this last year in the video that I did where I was channeling that song, Summer's Over. And then we went into Winter by Tori Amos. But yeah, I'm being brought to that song again. Summer's over. The leaves are turning brown. Now it's over. Release the old. Allow the old, outdated beliefs, people, expectations, dreams. Let them fall like the leaves are shed from the trees in the autumn. It's time to let go and rest. Make room for what's real and ready to grow. what's real, what is real. So the oracle asks us to wait, observe, don't let egoic urgency cloud divine timing. And autumn reminds us that only when we release old identities, especially those driven by fear or ego, can we truly rest and receive. This is where those scriptures are coming from and why they needed to be brought to light today. Because they needed to show you that every time the ego takes control, a fall happens. A tower moment, if you will. So if you don't release it by yourself, then the divine will step in. So this is about divine timing and going with the flow as well, right? Because the tides, they ebb and flow, just like the seas of Mintaka. So the bridge is remembering who you are to releasing what you're not, so you can receive what's meant for you. We're not here to destroy the ego. We're here to witness, honor, and integrate it. So it no longer runs the show from the shadows. The fall of Lucifer. Lucifer lives within our unconscious in the shadows. When we bring ego into the light, it becomes medicine. It becomes part of the whole. That's where true healing begins. And again, I say today's a 7-day, but I felt the energy of 6, that integration of the light and the dark. The inner journey, spiritual alignment, and seeking of divine truth. So I was going to continue this reading by shuffling my cards and pulling some from the Light Seers Tarot, but then I saw 22:21 on the timer and decided that I was going to end the reading here, but not without first pulling some cards from the Wild Unknown Archetypes deck. And I pulled the card, the Sustainer, and it's card number 24. Which, keeping true to my nature, I reduced down to 6, which talks to me more about balance. This card is about the ability, your ancient ability. Your ancient gifts, going back to the Lost Land card from the Starseed Oracle. It's the ability to integrate the ego into a more harmonious role within the self. Nurturing and allowing it to serve as a stabilizing force, not a dominant one. I'm having a problem with words now, which makes me think that it's almost time to end this. And at the bottom of the deck is the nectar. This is the joy that comes when we connect with the divine, our true selves, or even the collective. Your collective, my collective. We're all collective. We're a collective group of 8 billion people across this planet. Sweet reward comes from our deepest and most fulfilling connections, as well as the nectar we offer to others in return. So we have more balance. The nectar being at the bottom of the deck is number 58, and that reduces to 4. That speaks to foundation and stability. So we have balance and then foundation and stability, more balance. It's reinforcing the need for grounding and balance as we integrate the spiritual with the material. I'm thinking about that timer, 22:21. It adds up to 7. Today's a 7 day. We began this reading talking about that. Today's a 7 day. So it's just confirmation of the spiritual connection that's happening here. This is about finding the sweet spot of harmony between action and inner knowing, masculine and feminine, the blue in the sustainer and the pink in the nectar. Nourishing relationships and goals. 22:21 echoes the need for integration. The ego needs to be nurtured. And the sustainer reminds us that we can tend both, creating space for true joy and fulfillment. I love Eckhart Tolle because he pushes us to change our perspective on life. And he really forces us to begin to examine ourselves and become the observer. And he speaks to ego, but what in the book, The Power of Now, I think what people miss is that you're never going to get rid of the ego. And you're constantly going to be in a battle with yourself if you're trying to squash the ego all the time. And that's going to put you into 5 of Swords, 5 of Wands energy. There's the 5-5 again. The change that comes with this transformation. The timeline jumping that happens when we integrate the shadow with the light, the ego with the self. The ego is part of the self. And I always say that when I don't let my dragon out to play, she becomes a nasty bitch and will burn the house down. My dragon is my ego. And I must allow her to be part of my life. Not to dominate my life with fear and misunderstanding and illusion and lies. But she is always in the background, reminding me who I am. And that collective is your reading for Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, by the way. Have a very, very, very happy Sunday, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Bye.